What's going on, guys? Bladezilla here, and today we're checking out a real special knife from Shirogorov. This is the 111. Now, I have had a couple of these go through the site without really kind of advertising them. People have been just kind of asking for it, so I figured I'd bring some in and kind of show you guys what we're working with here. But before we do that, reminder, I do have these guys available on the website currently. I brought a number of them in. And as I'll show you right here, we can kind of see Shirogorov 111 in stock, lots of cool pictures and stuff, and I'll throw this YouTube video down on the bottom, but we are good to go, and that is a nice little shout out to me. Figured I'd do it. I don't do it enough, because believe it or not, people still ask me, you know, what is the site name? And it's like literally the name of the YouTube channel. So that's cool. It's all good. But let's get into the more important business here and show you a cool knife. So yeah, Shirogorov 111. And to start things off, reminder, this is just a casual conversation. Not sure how long this video is going to be, but it's as if we're at a coffee shop, hanging out, looking at blades, and just chatting about it. Because that is the main point here. So 111 being the biggest knife that Shirogorov makes, in that it is 111 millimeters on the blade length, which I don't know how exactly that translates to inches, but I'm guessing like 4.3 or something, 4.25 or something like that. So let's get some measurements here. Before we start, as is customary, we like to get blade length, so let's do that now. Let's take a look. So it is the biggest knife they do from Shirogorov, so it is, geez, almost 10 inches. That's what she said. But keep in mind that it's a very thin, slim profile on this guy. So blade-wise, we're at sharpened 4 3/8 maybe? Is that about right? 4 1/4, 4 3/8 sharpened, maybe a little bit hair over that in overall. But yeah, 9 and, let's say, 3/4. Overall length is kind of what I'm looking at here. Don't know what the website says. I could probably just look at my spec sheet, but that would kind of ruin it for me. So it's a big knife, and how does that compare in the Shirogorov family? Well, it is the top dog, so we're going to put that right up top here and fire in some other production knives to kind of show you the size. So F95, you know what? Let's do a Hattie. Here's a CCKS Hattie, because it's carbon, so maybe we'll try to keep things carbon. We'll see. I'm already out of carbon knives, so that's not going to happen. We will do the real close comparison, the Ignis. Had that one go up. I've had a few of these go through the site now. Seem to be popular. So that is the Ignis, and there's a lot of design similarities, I'd say, between these two, which we'll talk about later. We will do the Neon. Actually, no, let's go step down to the Stellar. This guy is a Stellar Sprint Run from their custom division. Super cool knife, but as you can kind of see, you're kind of starting to go down in blades. And if you guys do want to check that out, I still have yet to put a video on this one, but I will definitely have one at some point. But Shirogorov just keeps making more knives, so I keep having to put out more videos. And then finally the Neon. Where'd my Neon Zero go? This guy is the Walter Randolph Neon, which super cool knife. So maybe I'll actually space these out so you can kind of see the whole chain. If I can gently move this in like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. So there's kind of the full spectrum from the Neon to the Stellar to the F95 or Hattie to the 111. So you've got a full gamut of sizes, which is awesome because these knives rock. So, but we're not going to focus too much on other knives. I would probably want to stay in the larger size of things today, and then, quite frankly, it's more comparable to the F3 line, just because it is that inset liner lock. So some history on this knife. Well, It is called the 111 because it is 111 mils metric. And for my Canadian brothers, you'll understand that. But the Americans tend to not know what a millimeter is, which is fine. But to give you a perspective, I want to say it's like 25.4 millimeters is an inch. So do the math on that. Every 100 and a bit is 4 inches. So there you go. Over 4-inch blade, super cool size, which is terrific because of how thin that blade is. And we're going to talk about this. So the 111 being 111 mils is the length of the blade. But, one thing that Shirogorov hasn't done a really terrific job is kind of differentiating the different generations on the 111. And I'll try to kind of go through that. The main difference that I would like to kind of start at is, I guess, the Gen 5, this being the Gen 5.1. And the differences between those two are kind of, they're not huge, but they are big enough that it makes it so that a 4.25-ish inch blade or 111 mil blade is a lot more EDC-able than just being a full-on pocket sword that can kind of scare a lot of people away from owning one of these, because it's really not a very big knife. So we're going to kind of talk about that. May as well get into that now. So the main difference in this guy between the Gen 5 and the Gen 5.1, and you could even kind of go back and go prior to Gen 5, is the blade width or thickness. So I want to say most of this stuff is 3.5 mil on like an F95. I think maybe 4, but I have 3.5 in my head. This guy's 3 mils, and the previous generation was 3.5 mils, which was a scaling down from the 4 mil mark. So it's not just, okay, yeah, the blade's thinner, yes, it slices a little easier. It's actually the overall configurations of the knife. So when you have a 3 or 3.5 or 4 mil blade, well, you have to have somewhere to house it, right? So when you have that size, it's got to fit inside the handle. And when you make it so that the blade's thinner, well, guess what? The entire dimension of the knife gets thinner. So, it might not seem like anything crazy going from 3 to 3.5 to 4, or I guess in the other direction, from 4 down to 3.5, down to 3. That's a full mil. And when it's a full mil in overall reduced width of the entire width of the handle, plus the tolerances, percentage, I guess, kind of all over the place, you're really going to get a lot more carryable knife from my perspective. And it's in hand, I'm telling you guys, like, it carries way smaller than it looks. If we want to show some, actually this one won't stand very well. I'll try to stand it. Ooh. It's so light, actually. It's kind of surprising how light this guy is, and how it's not gonna stand too well because of the backspacer. But I will show you in hand here against, say, a F3, which you guys will have seen. Here's a Terrace. But look how much thinner it is than that Terrace. Let's see if I can get them close side by side without making love. So there's your Terrace comparison. So it's substantially thinner than a Terrace. And an F3 or F3NS is what people carry all the time. They're super used to it. It's totally pocket friendly and normal, but this guy is thinner than that. Okay? If we look at an F95, let's take a look. Also, you know what? You're getting close. It wouldn't shock me if it's thinner than this. I can't tell. I don't have a pair of calipers, but you can kind of do the math there and look for yourself. It's certainly carryable. The other concern with a 111 mil blade, it's heavy, it's big. I'm telling you, it's not heavy. I think it's around 4.5 ounces. Does that sound right? Let's take a look. Let's take a look here. Let's take a look. Let's do grams first. So we are coming in at 128 grams for my Canadian bros, or 4.5 ounces. Like, are you kidding me? First of all, this cannot be that accurate if I'm right, but 4.5 ounces, it's about right. I thought it was around that originally, so. The spec sheet online, I think, what do I have written here? 4.3 ounces, so just shows the accuracy. My scale's probably off, even though I did zero it. But yeah, it's a very light knife, to say the least. It does not feel heavy in hand. It does not carry big, and it's definitely doable. So, you know, most people, like I said, they see it and they go, it's too big, it's too thick, it's too heavy. No, it's not any of those things. In pocket, let's take a look at that clip. So we've got a beautiful clip that I think, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the technology has been shared with this guy from, I think it's a custom division bronze 111 is where they kind of started with this design. If I'm wrong, let me know, but that style definitely is influenced from the custom division side. It's nice because if we look at it from a side profile, the camera doesn't want to freak out. You can kind of see it's got a nice spot for jeans to kind of pile up and roll under the clip, but it's also got a nice duck bill sticking up on it, so that you're not going to tear apart your pocket on your jeans, kind of getting this in there, which is awesome. And then we've got obviously some milling on there. It just kind of adds to the whole flavor. Is it needed? Well, obviously when you flex that clip, you need somewhere for it to bend, and I'm guessing that's a good spot for it. The other thing, what else do you guys notice about this versus some of the other clips? And maybe I can grab we have it from like an F95. There we go. There's your F95 NL. What do you see here? Well, it's attached internally instead of external, which is cool, right? Why does that matter? It doesn't. It's just streamlined and has an aesthetically pleasing look to it that, it's attached internally. So I just think that looks awesome, and it's definitely something to note. On the tail end of this monster, we've got a beautiful spot to place the lanyard, which is great because on some of the other models like that Stellar, you can kind of see how they just have kind of drilled the hole in it, and looks great. Like it looks fine. Some people don't like it. Some people argue with me about it, and other people are neither here nor there. Me personally, I kind of like when it's integrated into the backspacer to kind of just clean that whole profile. But this is certainly not anything concerning. It's just something they're starting to do on a lot of their knives. So if we look at that F95 that I showed earlier, same kind of thing. They're building that lanyard clip into the backspacer, which is awesome. I like that. Just kind of cleans up the whole thing. And I should also show that beautiful NL, how they did it here, because they don't put a backspacer on it. Come on, there we go. So that is built into the frame itself. And I know, like, I can just hear me saying, oh, a replaceability factor, if you ever damage it, look, it's a titanium backspacer. It's like, not backspacer, sorry, it's a titanium handle. If you're going to bust that off, I think you're going to have bigger problems. But I suppose if you're heavy and hard and concerned about that, I guess you could always replace that backspacer at a costly amount if it was that important to you. So here we are, we're 10 minutes in. I haven't even mentioned a lot of the weight savings or the blade. There's so much to talk about with this knife. So let's get into the blade first, and we'll come back to the handle. So as you can see, we've got a nice M390 blade, which looks great. You're going to see M390 written on there. We have a little spot here as well, a little cutout. Looks great. Thinking out loud, I'm thinking that it's finished with a bit of a stone wash inside versus the satin edge. I'm just looking at that. You tell me. It looks like there's a different finish in there. Wouldn't shock me. I don't know if that's on the spec sheet or what. Yeah, I don't see it anywhere that I can see. But to me, it looks like we've got a little bit of a different finish in there. Okay. We also have a little edge, see on the bottom here, just above the M390. We've got a little bit of an edge there. And I don't know what the point of that is. And I've been thinking about this today. I always try to think about things that I want to say when I have these conversations. And when I do them in one take, I tend to say a lot of things unintentionally. And I try to work in 1 to 2 things intentionally. And this is one of those things. So I was thinking, if I'm going to reverse flick this, okay, and I should also say this, aesthetically it looks cool, okay, having that little fin there. Can we agree on that? It just looks cool. But from a practicality point of view, I think it might have to do with when you reverse flick this knife, which you can do. I'm not going to. This isn't about me, but I would think, or if you're thumb flicking it, your finger just kind of doesn't fill that hole as easily having that there, or it can kind of also guide your finger into that edge a little smoother. So I'm thinking if you're trying to take up space in that hole, it's for a reason. If it's not aesthetic, it's to help you reverse flick this. And my hand is wrapped completely around a tripod. I have zero leverage on this when I do these videos, so I'm not going to attempt to do that. And conversely, I also don't want to damage this knife. So that's what I think that might be for. As I mentioned, M390, which is beautiful steel. They've started to do a lot with M390 in their high-end production, and it's almost like they've kind of married that. I don't know if there's a reason behind that, but I would assume it's just because, look, people love it. It's at a good price point and easily accessible. Okay, people know it. It's kind of a gold standard right now. And you know what? You don't have to constantly bring it in from the US, which is nice. Now, another note is that we have this beautiful tip on the edge of this blade. It's kind of hard to show, but come on camera. We've got a little bit of a dive down, a little drop on the end of that tip. And if it's like any of the others, does it flare out there? Yes, it does. Man, they like doing that, eh? That's funny. I didn't even look at it, picked it out. So what they like to do, and I'll talk about that, is, you know, from a stabability point of view, you know, you want to maximize the insertion depth. That's what she said. And, you know, they put that little tip there, which helps with that, I think. It just makes it a little easier. It's a very slicey blade. Obviously, the grind on this is, it's a flat grind. But because it's a 3mm blade, it's very, very sharp and very slicey. You could definitely be using this thing to, you know, on a camping site, you know, cutting steaks, cutting tomatoes, vegetables. It's going to allow very fine cuts. And as we can see on the top of the blade, got some nice jimping, but they've also kept a very flat profile down the edge of the blade towards the tip. And then as we go back out, remember I was talking about that drop? Well, they really like to add some strength there, and that's why they kind of flare that out on the tip to kind of strengthen that. So there's a lot of engineering going on here, a lot of thought that goes into these knives. You know, in my opinion, no one is doing production knives to this level other than Shirogorov. And I've held a lot of knives, tons. You've probably seen the channel. I've experienced a lot, and I've really settled in on Shirogorov from a cost to quality ratio. Their production stuff is about as good as it gets in the world right now. So you obviously can, if you want, flick out with your thumb, which I'm not going to do, but you can. You can reverse flick it with your finger because it just finds that spot real easily, as you can see. And then you have this flipper tab. And one of the things that we talked about earlier was the weight of this being 4.5 or 4.3 or average of 4.4 ounces. Well, how are you able to achieve that? Well, look, obviously you have the thinner blade, right? 3.5 down to 3. You have a cutout here, which saves weight, looks beautiful, provides functionality to it. And then you look at the skeletonization on the flipper tab. Like, you don't have to do that. Okay, this is a production knife. You don't have to do the detail like that. But they do it anyway. You know, that saves weight. That's added material taken off, right? On the hardware as well, you can see you've got, you know, the big bit, the two smalls. Yes, you can use a screwdriver on this, but reminder, this is a list price of, I think, are they $12.50 US? Something like that. Look, guys, don't use a screwdriver on these. If you're going to do it, you know, use a penny if you don't want to spend the money on a tool. You know, if you get the tool, you're not going to have any problems. You're going to be able to take these things apart and observe absolute beautiful workmanship once you open it up. But if you do have to open it up and you don't have the tool, I suggest a softer, like a penny or even like a credit card folded in half. That will also work in a pinch and not damage or mar the pivots. It's just, I don't know why people do that, but every now and then you go on Reddit and you see some that are just absolutely dilapidated. Now, another thing that I've been talking about as of late, at least filming, is how they've had a tendency to kind of match the back spacer and the jimping on the top of the blade for kind of spacing. And, you know, it's close. I don't know if it's exact here. I can't really tell. You tell me. What do you guys think? You see the difference? Anything? It's close. But anyway, it looks cool. And is it needed? No, it just has a cool factor. The jimping itself, as I mentioned earlier, it's smooth. It's not sharp. It's certainly usable if you had gloves. And from you know, I'm an XL hand, and I'm kind of falling right on top of it, and not having any issues with it. So it's beautiful. The back spacer jimping, you know, is it for sure needed? You know, some people say no. I say, you know what? When you're holding a knife in your hand and you're looking to fire out, you know, the flipper tab here. Well, where's the handle of this thing? It's wedged in your hand. And you want that to be nice and secure. So yeah, you know what? Some added grip there, especially if you're wearing gloves. It's not a bad thing. Okay. Now, in terms of the rest of the handle here on both sides, it is carbon fiber, or what do they call it? Marble carbon. Anyway, I can't remember what they call this, but I've been asked many times, is it grippy? Is it smooth? People think that it's like grip tape. Other people think it's super soft and smooth. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's kind of in between. It's definitely smooth and grippy. If you look at it, there's like a ton of micro milling on it. Kind of in a, how can I say this? Like a kind of rounded perimeter pattern. Technical term, I guess. And I don't know how close I can get to show this without the light messing up, but hopefully you can kind of see some of it. In hand, it's very grippy and very nice. And it's not going to give you any problems. It's not going to slide out of your hand, anything like that. Speaking of grippiness, I love how they've actually milled in these little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little lines, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's borrowed from the F3. I think that's where they first did that, and I'll show you what I'm talking about on the handle here, so you can kind of see how they've done that. Obviously more, what is that, 6 or 7? 7 little lines, and then on the other side on the top, same kind of thing, 5. So I think that's nice. My concern is, you've put the same little lines in up here on the 111, but you don't do it down here. So it's a nice little, I guess, Easter egg, because of if you're following the Shiro lineup, it's very pleasing to you to see that, just because it's kind of like a home cooked meal, I guess. So it's nice. And down on the bottom here, some more milling, which takes off obviously some weight, not much because it's carbon. Those handle scales aren't going to weigh next to nothing compared to titanium, but it does add some ergonomic advantages when you are holding it. Kind of rounds the corner a little bit, and just, you know, Doesn't lead to any hot spots or anything like that. A knife like this is totally glove worthy. That's kind of what I would say. Remember, XL hands, and I could probably have 2 more fingers, no problem, on the back of this thing, any day of the week. So, no concerns there. Lots of room. What else here? So I talked about the milling on the handle, and as we kind of go up, you can kind of see the level of tolerances specifically on that blade and the back spacer. That's like, look at that, guys, like dead center, which shouldn't be a concern on a Shirogorov. It should be bang on out of the box, no questions, no concerns. Every knife is like this. What is different is just look how tight that blade is to that part. Like, if you're not in a production knife world where you're fitting things absolutely perfect, you're going to have problems with that. And I often say, like, another thing in the backspacer, how far it comes up, right? You look at this and go, well, it's because that tab's pretty big, but oh, you know, it's not that tight, right? But if we look at, like, custom division F95, right? Look how tight these tolerances are, okay? Same spot, look. Look how close that is. See what I'm talking about? Like Shiro, they know what they're doing. Now, mind you, that's a custom division knife, and I will do a video on that. It's probably my favorite knife in the collection. But the tolerances here are they're just nuts. And you can tell, they're not trying to get that close. It's obviously, there's lots of tolerance there. But on the blade itself, that's very unusual for a production knife to be that tight. From a tolerance perspective, that's nuts. To do that every time in 1,000 knives without having a concern, whew, that must be tough. On the inside of this, obviously we talked about, so we have the milling on both sides of the handle, which looks great. It's matched on the back, both sides, with those 5 drill columns, whatever you want to call it, with the bevel up here as well. And then on the inside, well, I think it's a steel inset liner. I always wonder if it was titanium or not, but for some reason the back of my head is telling me it's steel. And we learned a long time ago to not trust that, so don't trust me on it. But I think the material of that liner would be steel. We do have the MRBS symbol right inside there. Hopefully the camera's focused right now. I only have 2 hands. But it's written right above the little tab right there. So it should say MRBS. And remember, multi-row bearings, that's where we've got a pinwheel pattern of bearings in a circle on a track instead of in a circle. It's kind of 3 balls in a row. Bop, 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 bop. Now on the Gen 5, I think, is when they transitioned those MRBS bearings from, I want to say they had 2 different sizes on the 111s previous to that. And they've kind of standardized that on the, I think it was Gen 5, if not 5.1, but I'm guessing it was Gen 5. They standardized that to the same size bearings and tracks. Correct me if I'm wrong. From a usability and functionality point of view, it's smooth, silky smooth. This guy, you've seen every single flip I've done on this knife. It's not broken in, but it is smooth as silk. And the Shirogorovs like to float home, and this is no different. So if we put this guy up, this is full blade weight. It is not dropping on its own. It's just parking itself as we go down. So if we go down to the worst part, which is about there, that's the heaviest point you can kind of get. Still not dropping. But if I just give it a little wiggle, you can just see how loose it is, right? It just floats home. I shouldn't say how loose it is, just how smooth and controlled the blade drop is. It's not guillotine or guillotine. It's not Chris Reeves where you have to like get the jaws of life and push it home. It's, you know what, it's very smooth, controlled. It floats like no other, honest to God. So, The geometry on that flipper tab, you know, one thing that I would probably say I would like to see if I were to adjust something here is, remember how on a lot of the F95s we've seen the flipper tab, they kind of machine out a little bit extra material right behind the tab so that when you flick it, it's just a nice little soft spot for your finger to kind of drop into. Hopefully you can see that there. That shows a little better. How it's kind of curved a little on the top there. Okay. This guy doesn't have that. Now, I don't know if that's by design, but to me, it's an area they could probably kind of smooth that out so that when you do flick it open, right? See how, oh, come on, man. The camera's killing me here today. So when you flick it open, your finger just kind of rests on top, which is nice, but I'm sure someone will complain about that, like me. Right? It's a premium knife. You should expect premium features, specifically around the flipper tab. On the liner lock itself, I think I showed you some of the machining work. I would hope. You know, it's well done. It's, is it 2 passes or 3 on there alone? I can see 2, maybe 3. It's kind of hard to see when I'm looking at a tiny little screen, but you can see the detail work is next level, as always. Okay, it is raised ever so slightly from the other side so that your thumb can find it as well. So I'm going to roll the knife and kind of just show that. See, you can kind of see it starts poking up just a little bit. So it rolls quite nicely, and you know, it's very smooth. Now this compared to the F3 Ignis, let's take a look. I think they're the same style. No, they're not. I'm crazy. So there's the F3. Maybe I'm thinking of a different knife, but yeah, different style, right? So when you roll, kind of pokes up. Come on, man. There we go. Roll. See how it pokes up. So it's a lot thinner, obviously, which is totally cool. Now, there you go. So it is a little, I guess you could say it's like it feels a little sharper in hand. But remember, when you are making a knife that's so thin, you've got to not cut corners. I guess you could say actually cut corners, but thin corners everywhere you can, right? So it's all about added, the total width of everything, kind of all the components added together. So to me, it's not uncomfortable, anything like that. It's perfectly great, and my thumb finds it really well, which is good. From a lefty point of view, I don't think they're going to have problems with that. Unlike, I think, yeah, they just have to use their thumb, kind of pull it up, or use their finger, push it in. So definitely doable on the lefty, right? From a righty perspective, the pocket clip fits the hand well. There's absolutely zero issues with that, and it, you know, it just because of the rounded edges, it just goes in your palm real nice. No concerns there. No hot spots. God, this is a nice knife. The only inhibiting thing I would say with this knife is that they're only doing it in M390 in full carbon. You know, my question would be, you know, if we look at the F95, we've done multiple tiers, multiple steels, multiple price points. You look at the Neon, same thing. LMAX, Chromax, M390. The 111 is premium. It's at the premium end. In fact, it's more expensive than a production Quantum or Quantum or a Turtle. And I just go, I wonder if there's demand for this knife to be made in Chromax. With, say, you know, maybe instead of a carbon, do like a micarta. And instead of $12.50 retail, whatever it is right now, do you know, $8.50. I wonder if there'd be demand for that, or $800. Or if that's even feasible. This is me. I'm not the brightest bulb, not the sharpest knife in the block. I am not the sharpest Shiro in the case. So who knows? But I would ask the question: how come we're not doing different versions of this at different price points? Because I think there would be demand for it. You know, I'd get one. And I'm sure other friends would get one just to even try it out, to try the size out. Because when you're spending that kind of money, $12.50 retail, you have to be in love with it, I find, for the most part. And, you know, if it was $800, you'd probably get a lot more people trying them out, in my opinion. But that's just me. And I'm a nobody. You know, they've also matched, obviously, the clip and the back spacer, which is always nice. They have done some other versions of this. I want to say it was like a blue, or was it a purple colored carbon? And they kind of anodized the clip to match that as well, which is always nice, just because it kind of completes things real nicely, which I love. And what else here? What else do we got? You know, there is one thing that's kind of a little strange that I'm looking at here. And I don't know if this is me or what, but if we look at the knife, and we've got this little jimping here. What's that for? On the end of the blade, right? Why is there jimping here? Because you're not going to flick that. And then when you open it, where does it go? It goes into the handle. It's not accessible from the bottom for any reason. Was the original intention to like make that so you can like front flick it or something? I'm not going to try that, but I am curious why that's there. I would love to know. If anybody knows, leave it in a comment. And maybe it's just aesthetic, and it's just, hey, we want to kind of beef up the blade down there and stick it out so that it kind of protects the carbon. Maybe it is external to the frame of the carbon, not by much, but just enough. Maybe that's why. Huh? I never noticed that. Ain't that silly? The things you see when you're looking over a knife for half an hour. So there you go. Well, at that point, I think I'm going to, or on that note, I'm going to probably wind this one down. I've shown the size, I've shown you the weight, which is new for me. I've compared it with a bunch of different Shiros. And I've talked about the carbon, the skeletonization. Oh, I should say inside, it's all skeletonized as well. So they've done a couple different layers to kind of peel some material out of there. I don't know if you're going to see that. If you've made it this far, you might still be wanting to see it, so why don't I show you? Hopefully that can pick up some light. But yeah, they have done a little bit of weight reduction inside and milled out some pockets here and there to kind of make it that 4.5 ounce weight. Otherwise, I think that's it that I can think of. Yeah, they don't launch them very often. It seems they don't make a ton of them, but when they do, they seem to sell out really quick. So, you know, if you haven't seen one, definitely jump on one. You won't be disappointed. They hold their value pretty well as well for a production knife, just because there's not many of them. And, you know, because of the weight, because of the size, the carry factor, and it's literally a sword in your pocket, which is so cool because it's such a unique blade. You're not going to be able to, you know, 4 and whatever quarter-inch hinder or whatever, they would never fit like this. So not that they make, well, no, they've got the 24. It's a big knife. This is bigger and way cooler and lighter. But who am I? Just a guy flipping knives online. So there we go. That is the Shirogorov 111 Gen 5.1. Hopefully you guys found that interesting. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I read every comment, and we'll reply, all that stuff, as long as it's appropriate. And until next time, I guess we will catch you guys later. Appreciate you stopping by. Peace.